Hi everyone, good evening. This is Kenneth Muyingo connecting with you from my home here in Leiden. And I bring you greetings from the leadership of the Ugandan community here in the Netherlands. And I'm Kenneth Muyingo, the Public Relations Officer for the Ugandan community in the Netherlands, and also a member of the Career Advancement Network. And today we bring you yet another conversation with a co-production of the Ugandan community in the Netherlands with the Career Advancement Network. And this is all about career advancement because we are all here to seek out opportunities for ourselves and to just get to that point that we can be satisfied with the way life is playing out for us. Thank you so much for tuning in wherever you're connecting from. Just please let me know in the comment section where you're connecting with us from. I would really like to know. I'm connecting with you from my home here in Leiden, and COVID has taught us that it's possible to work from home, and I'm loving this about the fact that we can be able to even connect as a community. So if you are watching this from your home, just let me know which part of the Netherlands you're connecting from. I would really appreciate that. Today, I have a special guest with me in the studio, and I would like to bring him in so that he can introduce himself and say hello to you, our viewers and listeners, and then we can get into the rest of the conversation. Hi, Stephen.
Hello. Hi, Kenneth. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Welcome to this UCN Connect. And maybe we can just take a brief moment for you to introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners. Maybe there's someone who's watching and they would like to know more about you. What can you share with them?
Super. No, first of all, thanks for this opportunity. It's my first time to not only dial in, but then obviously be a guest already with the Career Advancement Network. Fully, really, register why we exist. It's a brilliant platform, and I'm really looking forward to a very good conversation, an interactive one, hopefully, and one where I not only learn, but also hopefully learn from the rest as well as part of this sort of professional body.
Indeed.
I'm called Stephen Otim, Doctor or Engineer Stephen Otim as well, if needed. I'm based in The Hague, so I'm dialing in from not too far from you, Kenneth.
Yeah.
I basically work in The Hague. I live here with my family, my wife and 2 kids. Been in The Hague now for almost 18 years, and I've just become a bit of a second home for us. And looking forward to hearing from everyone and hopefully contributing to how the rest of us can develop professionally.
Indeed. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephen Otim, for connecting with us. It's a privilege, and I think this is just one of the confirmations of the wealth of knowledge and resource that is within the community. And personally, I am a firm believer that there is power in unity. And one of the core values of the Ugandan community in the Netherlands is that actually the motto is that our strength is in our unity. And when we realize that we all have a part to play, and when we come together and do the bit we can, we are able to move all of us forward or together as a community. And I want to thank you for making time out of your busy schedule, first of all, to be available to do this, and for all the work you're doing, because this is the climax and this is what people see. But actually, there's a lot of dedication that you have done already. There's work that you have put in to be able to be available even on a day like this. On a Friday, you should be home with your family right now. But thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and we really acknowledge and appreciate you for that.
No, welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And so if you're connecting with us, please let us know. Engineer Stephen is connecting from The Hague. I'm in Leiden. Let us know in the comment section where you are. it's not, we're not by ourselves. We may not be with you in the studio, but you're with us in this conversation. I see there's some people watching. Please let us know where you're watching from. If you're watching from YouTube, just comment on YouTube and we'll receive your comment here in the studio. If you're on Facebook, just comment and we will be able to receive your comment here. So maybe briefly, what are we going to be talking about today, Engineer Stephen?
Well, Kenneth, it's a Friday. It's 6 p.m. We would have preferred to talk about topics that were more lighthearted, perhaps more
Uh-huh.
social even.
Yeah,
But I think this is an important topic that, despite the time of the day, I think is worth discussing. And
indeed.
we're talking about advancing your career and what strategies one could use to not only be steadfast in the career of their choosing,
Yeah,
enjoy their career, succeed, flourish, and hopefully soar, and to take them to the place that they would like to be in their career. Because we all know we have different goals, different destinations, but what are the kind of things that we all, sort of pass through, endure, see in our various workplaces, irrespective of our sectors, functions, or our roles,
yeah,
that maybe sometimes hinder us. And today I'm hoping to start a conversation around career advancing strategies. What should we be doing to help us to get from position A to B, irrespective of what your B is and where your A is,
indeed.
whether you're an early career professional, a mid career professional, even senior. I
Yeah,
think the kind of things we'll discuss today, I think, cut across. And a bit of me wishes I had them when I was just starting out. So
wow.
hopefully I'll be hearing from both the people that are ahead of us, those behind us, and perhaps those are with us in the same courage.
This is great. I like what you're saying that you wish you had this when you're starting out. And now that you've figured out what works, you have come back to share it with the community. And I think that's really powerful because this is, I mean, it's just outrightly amazing that sometimes we try to reinvent the wheel or to already figure out how some people are trying to uh, figure out how to make this work. And you have already done it. You know what works and what to do and what not to do. And so being here to, personally, I'm curious because right now Francis says is what connecting with us from Deventer. Thank you so much, Francis, for sharing that. We really appreciate. And thank you for being here with us. And we really acknowledge you for that as well. So I'm curious personally. I know I'm going to get some value out of this because I'm at a place and I think I'm about ready for a change, but maybe I was just not sure what to do next. But I think this conversation is going to be valuable for me even on a personal level. So when you're ready, we will get into it.
Super. Maybe before I start, while you flash the first screen, Kenneth,
Yeah,
um, what what I'm about to share today are just my own views, my own insights. They're a little bit my reflections. They're not even a totality of everything that I'm thinking about or that are going through my mind. But I am hoping that they're all seeds that can be planted in other people's minds. I'm
yeah,
expecting this whole body of knowledge can be expanded on, and indeed, it by no means is this a be on and end all. These are just ideas, and I'm hoping that together we can improve, and for each of these points, even have more depth added to them.
most definitely.
Thank you. So, in the next slide, I just really wanted to first start. By the way, in this whole conversation, I have about 6 or 7 slides. They're really meant to be more interactive and just, as I mentioned, points to feed off and to sound from. Um, I'm looking forward to the Q&A because I think hopefully by then there'll be more that we shall read from each other. But I think it's good to start with a little bit of a grounding, and what I've put in here are just points which, going back to what I said, Kenneth, before, I wish I knew even before I'd started doing anything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um. So I think people, when people say, well, I want to develop a career, I'm building a career, this is holding me back in my career. Maybe it's good to reflect a little bit about what that means and how different these are from jobs. Yeah. Um, a job might be something that you're doing as part of your career, but it doesn't really mean that for every job that you do, it is building your career or it's helping you manage your career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think of jobs as just the task, the completion of tasks that you set out to do within a month, 6 months, a year, or you could play them even your mini goals. Whereas for me, a career is that end-to-end package of
Yeah.
maybe multiple jobs. Sometimes you even do jobs that are outside of your career, but they're more than just the paycheck. They're more than just the kind of thing that you do to basically clock off by the end of the day. Um, and oftentimes, because sometimes we think of jobs and not careers, we are not intentional,
Yeah.
and we find that we are weaving along and just doing the next job and the next job. Maybe you get promoted, maybe the job ends and you just pick another job, but being intentional helps that there is a strand.
Yeah.
There's a thread between the jobs that you've done, because
Yeah.
maybe there's something that you're gearing towards. There might be a place you want to be in whatever career you choose, whatever field. But the difference in career management and just doing a job is intent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see people that we might think of as successful or maybe have role models. They set goals. They intentionally want to be someplace that they desire. It's moving from A to B,
Yeah.
and in part of doing that, they're very, very aware about what their strengths and their weaknesses are, and where they need to build on their strengths, where they want to push on their strengths, and where their weaknesses either want to be trained or we need to be with someone. And fundamentally, you see that these are tenets, these are things that are constant around people that have enviable or let's say good careers. Is very much intent. It's planned. It is not, they're not floating about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really think, again, I wish I'd known that rather than just doing the next job. It would have helped me to be more intentional. And not this, I'm talking about, um, you know, 1st of January, setting your New Year's resolutions, but being intentional in March, in June, in July, when you're on holiday, when you're in your free time, when you're riding your bike back home. It's, wow,
Yeah.
what could I do next? It's that I can't underscore more. It's very, very important to be intentional about where you want to be.
Yeah.
That, Kenneth, naturally meets, takes you to goal setting, because then if you're intentional, you know where you want to go. You typically have to set a goal. If you want to go to Amsterdam from Rotterdam, you have a little bit of a plan of how you're going to get there. If you're the more athletic among us, you might cycle, maybe you might take a train, you might drive, but there's things that you plan. And I like this phrase, which I guess all of us know about, is if you fail to plan, then you've sort of, in a sense, planned that there might be failure along your path, because you've just floated about and you've gone with the wind, and you've just found yourself where the wind blew.
Yeah.
And why I advise sort of the people behind us is in goal setting is, I used to think setting a goal is just saying, oh yeah, I'll be doing this at some day, and then I leave it at that. But having smart goals is so key to managing your career. That is something that cannot be repeated enough. And by smart, you see it here on the slide, about having a specific goal.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's measurable. I need to, for example, learn how to drive. I need to have a driving license by end of this month because it will help me to do XYZ. Obviously, it should be achievable. Otherwise, then you don't want a moonshot. You don't want something that is way out of your capabilities, because that will lead to frustration. It needs to be relevant because it's relevant to your career, and obviously, hopefully, time bound, because otherwise, then if you don't apply the pressure of having a time bound goal, your career might also just float. So you want to make sure that it's achievable, it's realistic, relevant, measurable, and absolutely specific. And you begin to now see that once you are approaching a career slightly differently from a job, that it puts pressure on yourself. Yeah, it puts pressure on yourself, because then you think about yourself, oh, I should be here, perhaps I could be here. Obviously, sometimes you'll fail to meet some of those targets, but actually now you are getting more and more into sort of the goal.
Indeed.
I wish I'd also known while I'd started this out that careers are not linear. Yeah, much as you might set a goal, by linear, I don't mean it moves A, B, C, D until you get to Z. You're not going to
Yeah.
start as an analyst, someone, or intern something, and then in 2 years you are associate, then a manager, senior. It just doesn't work like that. In fact, a lot of the people that we admire who are successful in life will tell you how they went through ups and downs. Managing a career often means you'll get a setback, you will not get promoted, you will not get the right team, you'll not get the right boss. You will struggle, you'll get poor ratings, performance reviews might not come out the way you want, you'll not
Yeah.
get the sexy assignment, you will not move as quickly as perhaps your plans were. But that in itself is part of managing it, because it could be cyclic. You may have to make lateral moves. You may have to change your employer. You might have to
Yeah.
change the sector. And that for me is also another difference between a job and a career. Because if you're just doing a job, you stay because it's just a job. It's just paying the bills. But if you have a career, sometimes you even take decisions that may be hard to take, hard to swallow,
Yeah.
but are fundamentally right for you going forward. And then the last thing is there has to be some boldness and some calculated risk. I underline the word calculated. I don't think it should be sort of risk which is unmitigated, but you
Yeah.
need to sometimes be bold. Sometimes you need to put yourself out there. Sometimes you need to try something you've never tried. And sometimes you need to put yourself forward even when you don't know everything. And I guess, to be honest, that's also in life something that you see coming in front of us. It's not only when you know everything fully do you make that step forward. So I wanted just to put this in front of everyone because I think when we have the conversation and hopefully in the Q&A, these will come back. Is being intentional, being direct, goal oriented. Things are not linear, and sometimes there's element of risk that needs to be put there. At least this is what I found in my career.
Absolutely amazing.
Good. Hopefully these are resonating. But Kenneth, maybe let's move to the next one just to give it a bit of meat because this was just sort of
Yes,
high
please.
level. Um, yeah, high level points that I just raised at the top. In my career, one of the best managers I ever had said that if he ever was to put up a formula for how to advance your career, because you could manage your career and manage it well. I've met people that don't want a promotion, don't want to even move to a different department. They want to stay in that department. They're managing their career. So you could argue they're happy. But I guess kind of what we've been telling people is how to advance your career. So if you want to move one or two or three, I don't know how many steps forward, one of the things that one of my very best managers did raise was PIE, PIE, performance, image, and exposure. And I think this is what I'm going to use in the next 20 minutes or so to talk through the next slides, uh, because then they really anchor everything that I think helps. So the first one is performance. So we know you got to perform, you got to deliver to your targets.
Yeah.
If you're in sales, if you're in marketing, accounts, finance, HR, CP, pick whatever field. If you do not meet your targets, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, if you're unreliable in terms of a performance perspective, and that's why it's number one. Very, very unlikely. I know there's people that don't perform, and when I talk about the people that have a godfather, when I talk about people that are super, super, super connected, I'm just talking about the average run-of-the-mill person.
Yeah.
You have to perform.
Yeah.
You don't have to be Usain Bolt, but you
Yeah.
have to be consistent in your delivery. That
Indeed.
means when we ask Kenneth to do something, Kenneth does what he did last week and does it again on Tuesday and does it again on Wednesday. It has to be consistent. It cannot be Kenneth does something very well on Monday and then on Friday we don't know where Kenneth is. So that
Yeah.
is what they call table stakes. It has to be part of just who you are if you want to advance your career. And I'll talk about the different facets in the next piece. The second thing is image. So you could think of that as a brand. So I show the Pepsi Cola there. I could have put any other, any other brand, but you need to be known for something. Your image needs to precede you. So in addition to performing, we need to know that, yeah, not only is he a good performer, but fundamentally he's good for one or two or three things. And we are human. We don't remember everything. Sometimes we only remember the bad things, but oftentimes everyone has some sort of a persona, some sort of aura around themselves, and there's an image that comes with you, with the name. As
yeah,
soon as I say Kenneth Muingo, there's in people's minds, there's something that comes up. And now this is a little bit of a soft skill, and that's what we shall also be talking about, is you need to manage that a little bit, because there's so many examples of people that are good performers, but because you either don't know them, you don't see them, you don't feel them, they don't have an image, it's not been cultivated. Some people call that a brand. If that brand
yeah,
is not visible, it's hard to advance.
yeah,
Yeah. And then the third one, which is called exposure, which you could say is visibility, is now that you perform, we understand you as a certain image, as a certain brand. How do we get you to other places? Because an advancement means going a different place. You're moving from A to B.
yeah,
A new company, a new role, a new department, a new sector, starting your own business. That exposure, and that is even gets harder. You'll notice that when we move from one to two to three, it gets softer and a little bit harder. And that's intentional, because everyone could typically have one. Two is good. Having all three is oftentimes, that's what my line manager said once,
yeah,
oftentimes a good recipe. So it's
yeah,
like saying, if we're baking a cake, you need the eggs, you need the flour, you need the oven, and all of that, just to make sure that hopefully you can get a good cake, and hopefully you're a good cook.
indeed.
Yeah. So Kenneth, what I want to do now for everyone is to go through each of these pillars and just talk through a bit, some just to make it a little bit real,
Yes,
and hopefully those will be the strategies that people can take away. So maybe you got the next one, and we talk about just performance. And we have the Uganda, sorry, and Netherlands logo on the far right, but this under the performance tower. Yeah.
yeah,
There is no way you will advance if you don't manage your time well.
yeah,
Yeah. And time is a limited resource. We all have 24 hours in the day, but for the same two or three people that have the same amount of time doing exactly the same role in a job, a task, you'd find that there's just some people that manage their time better. And after a week, 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, they just are ahead.
yeah,
That's just because they manage their time better. And you cannot do all the other stuff well. And that's why I started with time management if you do not manage it well. So, first of all, it's a finite resource. You have
yeah,
max 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't know how many hours you work. You cannot expand that. That's a finite resource. So what that means is living in a world where, there's phone calls from, people back home, spouses, kids having to take to school, workmates, everything, plus your email box, plus targets and all the other things that get your attention. You oftentimes find that you really need to prioritize. And one of the things that I've learned very, very quickly is to be ruthless in time management, because that takes you ahead 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ahead. In a year's time, you are way,
yeah,
way better at getting things done if you're ruthless with your time management. And what
yeah,
I've put here on the right hand side is a simple tool. These are just all over the internet anyway. They're 2 by 2 boxes. And on one side, you have importance. So that's on the vertical. Things are important and not important. And then on the horizontal, why you have things that are urgent and not urgent. So this is called an Eisenhower matrix. And yeah, it's obvious. Yeah, the things that
yeah,
are not important and not urgent. So that's what you see in the red. Delete, don't bother with, don't spend too much time with, ignore. I don't know what the right nice word
yeah,
is delete. The things that are typically unimportant but urgent. Now that is a trap. So you see the blue, yeah?
yeah,
It's urgent, so it very easily captures your attention, but it's actually not important. I don't know, a phone call, or maybe someone ringing the door. Let's say you're supposed to be doing work and then the TV is on,
yeah,
or someone is asking for something. It's a phone call, maybe sort of an emergency. Those are the biggest drainers of your time. Things that appear urgent but are not important. So imagine if you're at work, you have a deadline, a task, you want to make sure that anything that comes to you, if it's not urgent and important, it is either a delegate or a schedule.
Yeah.
Now, what I like at the top, the green and the yellow, so if I look at the yellow, that is something which is important, but it is not urgent.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it's important. So maybe that's something to do with like planning. Maybe you need to
Yeah.
set up your goals. Maybe you need to write a report, which is due in a month's time. The
Yeah.
things you schedule. And by scheduling, that means then you, well, we all have agendas. We live in Holland, agenda, you have to schedule things because
Yeah.
fundamentally that helps you to keep on track and avoids the next urgent thing to basically take you off from the important thing. You
Yeah.
have to be very, very careful of that.
And
And
then,
obviously, you want to spend 90% of your time on the green, things
yeah.
that are urgent and important. So imagine there's a deadline, you need to go and meet a sales target, you need to go and interview someone, you need to do project work, you need to whatever it is in your function, that's where you should be spending 90% of your time. So if you think an easier way to think about it is spend as much time with the top half, important things, don't let
Yeah.
important things bother you, and you're only now scheduling things that are not urgent and working on urgent things. So that is the way I think of it
Yeah.
to help people to do it. And this is very important because you find bright people, intelligent people, connected people, they have images, they have exposure, but they don't manage their time well. Then their deadlines take, then they can't perform. And if performance is off, the other two are out.
Yeah. Oh, this is good.
Yeah. Next one, Kenneth. So now that you've managed your time, everyone, whether they like it or not, will have to manage stakeholders. And by stakeholders, I'm using this word as very, very broad. And I should have put maybe the second bullet point as the first. Stakeholders are up, down, and sideways. Yeah, there's people that you work with, your colleagues in whatever space you work. Obviously, there's your boss, your line manager, your lead, whatever you call him or her. And you might or might not have people that work under you. So these are people that either report to you or fundamentally, and why I spend a little bit of time here, is people whose input is required for your work. Sometimes it's just people that you need and they're so key. So knowing and understanding who they are and where they sit in your value chain is very important because again, they are very important for your success. So before I go to there, and this is the last 2 by 2 box that I'm showing, the rest are different methods of frameworks, is there's people that have interested in your work or have interest in your success, let's say, or in whatever you're doing in your line of work. And again, there's people that have power or influence or can influence the outcome of your work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So similar to the previous one, the ones that have low interest, so basically they're just people that they're not even interested in your work, they're not interested in your success, and they don't have any power over the outcome of your work. Minimal effort. So those are people that you spend the least time with. You're possibly going to think, yes, we monitor them. Maybe they shift, or maybe they change, but for most of the time, they're at an arm's distance.
Yeah.
There's obviously people that are interested, but again, they don't have too much influence or power. You might inform them. And why I think this is important is because it affects tower number 3 about exposure. Remember, Kenneth? Talking
Yeah.
about you need to let people know what to do. You need to expose. You need to develop a brand.
And then,
Even when someone is interested in your work, but they may not have power, keep them informed because fundamentally they might become your ambassador, your mentor, your friends, your network later. So this is often a space which is ignored. Oh, this person doesn't have power, doesn't have influence. They are interested. Once they're interested in your work, they can be an ally in the future. So keep them close to you and keep them informed.
and then,
Then it gets the difficult one, the people that have power over your destiny, the people that are part of your value chain, maybe in the department, they are, in the workplace, they have a lot of influence. These you need to at least at the bare minimum keep satisfied if they don't have too much interest. But fundamentally, if they're very interested and they will maybe give you more work, they will be the ones that will be involved in promotions. They'll be the ones that will be involved in selling and giving the work visibility, eventually to
yeah.
help the brand. They need to be managed closely. And by managing closely, I mean If they have needs, we need to anticipate those needs before, and so that we
yeah,
meet them so that they don't have to come and ask. We need to be proactive. We need to share the success. But also, if there's things that are wrong, they need to know earlier. They don't want to be caught unaware when they're
yeah,
interested in the work. They have power to change things, and then they're being told in the 11th hour a deadline, a target, a sales pitch could not go ahead because of something that was not managed. This is very powerful because you also see this in politics everywhere,
yeah,
by the way. This is not only in workplaces. People know who's bread to butter because they understand who has the power and who has interest. I
yeah,
know this can sound a little bit, and it's, you see, it's at the bottom slide there, sorry, bottom of the point there. Politics are part of our organizations. We're human. People fundamentally coalesce and meet with people who are alike and who
yeah,
they find common interests.
yeah,
So if you don't have one and you're in the workplace, try and create one or try and get close, or at least know where the wind is blowing in there.
mm, indeed.
Um, because that is very fundamental to basically your advancement going forward. And as you see there, the other ones about managing your manager. People do not always think about this, but a way of anticipating their needs before and trying to almost solve their problems before the problems come puts you in a better light. And that, again, fundamentally improves on the image, the visibility that we shall talk about a little bit later. And the last one goes out saying, don't burn bridges, because even when someone is not interested or a powerful stakeholder today, the world could change. Tomorrow, they might become a powerful stakeholder. People can move in this matrix. So it's better to basically keep your bridges intact.
Yeah, wow.
Good. Then performance. You manage well your time, you do your deliverables, you are good at what you do. Let's say you've gotten in and you're skilled, but that's not the end. Performance involves learning and development. This means we have to adopt a learner mindset for two reasons. We've seen reports now from, let's say, the World Economic Forum where they say, on average, yeah, this is a very generic statement, on average, skill sets last only about 3 to 4 years, maybe max 5, before they become obsolete. What does that mean? That if you want to have a career that obviously not only grows but is sustainable, fundamentally we need to adopt a mindset which is one that learns, continuously grows. But actually, what I missed to add here is you need to learn, unlearn, and then relearn, because there are things that we knew just before Corona. Corona came, we've thrown them out, and now we have to learn. So if it takes you too long to also unlearn, you're sort of being left behind. And then as soon as you've finished unlearning, you have to then learn the next thing,
Yeah,
because learning is lifelong. We are in a world now where gone are the days you learn one skill set and then you use that one skill set till the end. Very few skill sets. You could even argue some of the things I'm talking about are the more constant skill sets. All the other skill sets will basically die out. I mean, a good example is those in the information technology domain. I remember many, many years you needed to learn 2 or 3 programming languages, then 5 programming languages, and 6 programming languages, and then you need to be a full stack developer. And then guess what? Now artificial intelligence is here. You don't even need to know the right one. So
yeah,
we need to unlearn and then learn for the next thing. And this cuts across everything. So if there's one thing I would tell young people now, you cannot get to any workplace or even in your own workplace and have a fixed mindset. You got to
yeah,
think about being continuously moving to a new and a new world and evolving along.
yeah,
I don't know, Kenneth, if a lot of people have heard about the 70-20-10 rule, but this is something which I had some years back as well, which says learning is 70% on the job,
yeah,
20% coaching or being shown or mentorship or being, your line leader, and only 10% in sort of training and going for certificates and all of that. What does that mean? That means then that while you're at work, while you're managing your stakeholders, while you're managing time, your attitude at doing tasks is actually learning. Because tomorrow, if something comes and you're one of the people that are resistant to change, you're still questioning why things are changing, you are missing on the 70%, which is majority of the learning and growth and development.
Indeed.
You can't wait for the 10% to go on a course and then you become proficient. You can't wait for the 20% when your line manager, your boss, your lead has to first show you. In fact, you'll be seen as someone that is being left behind.
Indeed.
So, in addition to getting a growth mindset, you need to know that in everyday work, that's where you're developing your skill set, your competency, and your proficiency. So, the mindset to come to work or to do work is a learner mindset from the get go. And they're the people that learn very quickly. And over time, all matters constant, tend to advance because they master things quickly because they're malleable.
Indeed.
I've talked a little bit there about professional certifications and courses. We'll touch a little bit on that as well, but that goes without saying that while you learn, obviously you need your certifications because you need, again, the visibility. You need to be seen to be a professional. So it's good to have that, but you need to very quickly come and then begin to employ those, obviously, in the work scenario, which means embracing change. Change is the only constant in the 21st century. Things that were done a certain way even 2 years ago. I mean, how many times have we talked about working from home? You have to embrace change and be able to very quickly learn that wherever you are, as you evolve, there'll be different times when you have to do things differently, which inadvertently means you have to have resilience. You can't take away resilience from performing well because not all projects will run on time. You'll not meet your deadlines all the time. You might meet teammates or workmates that are not the most supportive. You might be in a toxic environment. All of those will need you to have a bit of a thick skin. So if mentally you are there that you now need to be resilient and embrace change, those are tool sets that will help you to basically get to a better place in your career.
Good stuff.
Good, Kenneth. Then the last one around the performance. This is a topic that I could even have a whole 1 hour separately on. It's very, very dear to me. And it's something that I'm not ashamed to say set me back a little bit when I was starting up and only took me a while to master, to become an effective communicator and be intentful as well. And only then did I feel that I was progressing. Yeah. And this one touches not only performance, but now we're in the second tower around the image. Yeah. Communication skills and teamwork. I did mention that the World Economic Forum did some studies and they're talking about skills of the future. And you will not believe it. The first one that was on the list was communication skills, because the realization is that you cannot now do any amount of meaningful and productive work alone. You are always as part of a team or part of a process. You need to hand over or receive input or output from other people, that you're never working in isolation. You're not an island, so you will have to work with others. So the
Indeed.
ability to communicate is so fundamental to your success that it is almost the first thing that I think should be taught basically to not only school going kids, but to all young professionals, how to communicate. And what do I mean by that? The first point I put there is passive listening and active listening. It's easier to always speak, but it is so difficult to listen. In my first job in Uganda, about 20 years or so, I remember the boss said, "You have one mouth and two ears. So you should be listening twice as much as you should be talking."
Yeah.
And that has stayed with me fundamentally ever since. And let me explain the difference a little bit. Have you ever been talking to someone and you see they can't wait to respond? Their lips are almost quivering because they they are spending more time waiting to answer or to counter an argument rather than calming down, listening first, absorbing, and then after that responding. That's the difference. Passive listening is just shutting up or being quiet and almost shutting down, whereas active listening is not only not speaking, but actively engaging. Why this is important is two reasons. One is 70% of communication is nonverbal. That means then while someone is talking, if you actually pay attention to their hand gestures, you see I'm doing hand gestures, or for example, if they're nodding, their eyes, how they're twitching, the smile, that gives you a lot of extra information that tells you whether someone is in sync with you or if the communication is landing or not. The second but very important reason, which I learned while as a consultant, was you have to be absorbing information. If you're passively listening, you're missing information because someone is talking and it is just basically bypassing you. So then someone will say, "Oh, yeah, I mentioned that last time. I was in a meeting and I listened. Then how come, Kenneth, you didn't understand me? Why not?" Now I'm repeating it a second time. This affects your image because then you're not a good listener. You're not an active listener. But if I actively listen and then I remember the 7 things Kenneth told me while we were in a meeting, Kenneth thinks of me as someone that is not only invested, but is proficient. I've not done anything with what Kenneth told me. I just repeated what Kenneth told me, but Kenneth now thinks I'm proficient. So active listening is so, so important that even in the room, now not only when you're talking about senior people, junior people, and just your colleagues, it is it is it is almost one of the things that is the nut and bolt of teamwork and collaboration. Because then it is just clear, it sets the red carpet for everything else tomorrow. I don't need to go through all the details here around effective communication, around obviously your grammar, professional language, email etiquette. All of these for me go together because fundamentally you're in a workplace. You need to communicate what has been agreed. If something is clear, if it's not unclear, you need to be obviously succinct. You don't need to be too verbose. You don't need to be also too shallow. So you need to figure out what is the right balance based on the, I think I mentioned the earlier slide, managing your manager and managing your team. If the team is a technical team and they need extra information, you need to have some depth in your communication. If it's a summary, because an executive summary that's going into a PowerPoint slide or that's going into a report, the executive summary has to get the exact point of what you're trying to communicate. And you need to balance when you are detailed versus when you are maybe generic, when you maybe use jargon, when you don't use jargon, when you use abbreviation. So effective communication captures all of these, and it goes into the language, the grammar, and as I mentioned, looking professional. Because remember, we're building towards the second tower about your image. As part of teamwork, as part of teamwork and collaboration, one of the things that I learned quite later on is I noticed that a lot of my colleagues were always offering to help. Oh, how can I help you with this? I heard you say you're working on this project. Do you need any help? This is actually a very good social cue because it projects that you're before before I've even shown that I'm competent, I'm
Yeah.
already projecting that I'm working with the team, that maybe I can show you in the right direction. And then tomorrow, when there's a new project, when they talk about who can we second to a project or who can we let go, already you're in a whole different light because then you're seen as collaborating and a team player. You've had that, or seen that in CVs and resumes. I'm a team player. I'm a team player. But these are ways to be a team player without even doing anything. Obviously, if you then put your hand, then we're back to performance. You have to deliver. Or if you feel that there's gaps, effectively communicate and say, "Hey, here I'm struggling, or I might not be able to deliver this." Then again, you leave your image sort of intact. I like the second last one. I learned that when I was part of a large global project about 10 years ago, is to know when to lead and when to be led. There's a lot of people that are very good as leaders. We're going this way. This is the project plan. You deliver this. And they're very good with all of these things. But you will not believe it. The people, when it's now their time to be quiet and then be led, they then become the disruptive person, and then you lose the teamwork, and then you lose the collaborative brownie points. Um, and that just shows that lack of versatility, not knowing about change. I've been in organizations where someone was my teammate and then the next day they're a leader, and then now I have to work with them and I have to report to them. And trust me, if you did not behave well when you're being led, trust me, you'll not be good. If you're a leader, you will not be a good role model. So that's something I think maybe for us to remember as part of professionals. And the last one is not to be a doormat. I think maybe because of our culture upbringing, we always say yes. We always um, would rather almost like die on a hill than to say no. Or sometimes when someone is being disrespectful, someone has crossed the line,
Yeah.
we are perhaps unwilling to say, hey, 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 this is where my boundaries are. I think, yes, we might be chasing career growth, but I think part of your humanity should not be lost as part of that process. And that goes back to effective communication. You can say, even to the most senior person, I don't appreciate how I've been treated, or I don't think I'll be able to do this work, or you're asking me to do something outside of on my weekend or something like that. As long as you're doing it in a respectful, professional way, nothing will be held against you as long as you do it with good intent and you're not being a doormat, because we know as well there's times when some people are being taken advantage of, and that's not something we want.
Indeed. Wow, absolutely amazing. This is so much value. Thank you so much, Engineer Stephen, for making time for this. Our viewers, if you have any questions or comments, you can please drop them in the chat and we'll be able to receive those here in the studio. I am getting so much value out of this personally, and I hope you are too. And if you have any comments or questions about what is being shared, would really appreciate to receive those.
Super. Just two more slides. I know it's a Friday again, so hopefully this is getting value, but I won't take too long. Just two more things. So this is now the third pillar. So this one is around exposure. So we've talked about performance. You do what you say you're gonna do. You build a development brand. You collaborate. You talk with people, and fundamentally, you're seen as a team player. The last thing, which I have to admit, I still don't do as well as I could, is to network and build relationships. And I'm going to start with the bottom point first. Um, is oftentimes we think, oh, I need to network now because I'm about to lose a job, or I need a network now because I'm looking for this. That is the wrong way of networking, and I learned that so late. Is you need to fundamentally build relationships or networks before you need them. Yeah, it's almost this whole idea of building sort of planting a tree before you need a shed. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that comes after you've done your personal branding, you've joined networks, and you're in places like in LinkedIn. You're perhaps friends with recruiters within your sector, because remember, you're building a career. You're not just doing jobs. You know what's going on within your industry, and the kind of posts and the things that you put out are things related to your industry or related to your career that you want to build. Those are the kind of things that oftentimes then give you exposure, that fundamentally then tomorrow, whether there's a bridge that has been burnt or you've let go, or you just want to move to a new area, that you can now rely and fall back on this social capital. So this is what they call social capital. Yeah. And by networking, I don't mean almost like senseless butterflying around. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? And it has to be a little bit meaningful. Remember, we just talked about active listening. So you're talking to people and saying, oh, what are you doing in your field? What are your challenges? What have you done? What do you like about the field? And then vice versa, you're giving some help back to those people that are also in your network. For example, if someone wants help, are you seen as someone that's a connector that offers referrals? And these relationships that you build now then lead to what I put there as a second last point: sponsorship. This is something that now I have to put my hand up. I admit there's no magic formula for this. It is just, I think someone once said that a great sponsor is someone who whispers your names in the rooms that you're not in. That's sponsorship. So, oh, you're looking for someone who is very good at moderating. Oh, Kenneth, go talk to Kenneth. That is sponsorship. But how did I know Kenneth? That is all the points of the ones above, is connecting with them, networking them, and then sponsorship comes later, and sponsorship lasts, because fundamentally it takes you places that your hard work, your performance, and your image did not. So that is the real reason why people say social capital and networking is very important. I agree. This is a little bit of a loose one. It's hard to give someone hints and tips. But again, like I said, I've just dropped these points here just for people to chew on, bite, and hopefully there'll be more when we share this slide and there's 10 or 15 other points. But fundamentally, something I've learned is build your network, talk to people, indeed share professional networks and professional posts, connect with recruiters, build bridges before you need them, and hopefully that will develop into the sponsorship, which will blow up your exposure. And then your personal brand will lead, because then we know what you can deliver, and hopefully that opens doors for you. One last slide, Kenneth, then I think we're ready for Q&A. This is a little bit of a sideshow, because I think when people are thinking about pushing for careers, they forget that you can only push for a good career which will last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I don't know how long your career will be if you've not taken care of your body. And this is something that for us that have now uh, gotten a little bit exposed and seen that the more you work, the longer you work, the older you become, the higher you rise. There's a little bit of a toll on your body, because that means then, for example, I'm in the office right now. Yeah, there's people that will be in working on weekends. You cannot neglect self-care, because otherwise you will not have the body to advance that career with. And by self-care, there's so many things. Again, I've written these five or six about your nutrition, good sleep, being hydrated, physical wellness, mental wellness. Especially for us men, I think mental wellness is something that we don't think or talk about or subscribe to, or perhaps because of our upbringing, is not something that's front and center. But if you're working in an environment that's maybe toxic or overpressure, things like burnout can eventually be quite a big topic. I've been in a global deployment where someone walked out of in the middle of the day. He was one of our analysts, and there's just so much pressure on him. And mentally, he was done. He just packed up, left the laptop, literally left the laptop on the desk, because he just could not do it anymore. And he had not been having good sleep. He had been struggling. His deliveries were falling apart. And I cannot emphasize enough. You need to take care of your body. Then you can even think about a career. Otherwise, we're not even talking about the same thing. Um, And lastly, you need to digitally detox. And by digital detoxing, I mean sometimes you need to switch off that phone, or just seek a happy place. We are now constantly on from when we rise in the morning until when we basically put our heads. And then some of us wake up to um, go and ease ourselves, and we still check on the phone. Uh, you could tell me that you're getting only the most positive energy from the phone, but I'd disagree. You need your eyes to let go as well. You need to go to a happy place, whether that's something sporty, read a book, just being present. People have talked about being very aware of your surroundings, but I think digital detoxing is something that also helps. Switch off the phone. The work will continue. Trust me. There's even when CEOs go away, they have to switch off sometimes. And then fundamentally remember, work hard, play hard. My One of my other bosses that I had, who taught me a lot, was when he comes to work, he is 100% switched on. I could not even get a second high out of him. He was just a Steve, what do you want? Okay, fine, go and do this. Let me know if you have a detail. Work, 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 work. And I was totally shocked when I would meet him on the weekend and he would not say a thing about work, and he's telling me about which party he had been to and what he was doing over the weekend, the barbecue, and how he was fixing the tiles. And I learned no wonder he was going far, because guess what, Kenneth? Good time management. He was managing his time well. So when it was time to switch off, he maxed switch off time. When he was at work, he maxed switch on time for work, and that's what he offered, and that's what he gave. So I want to end by that. And thank you, Kenneth. Hopefully, I've shared some bits of wisdom. I'm really looking forward to hear from everyone else, and hopefully we'll get some engaging questions from the group.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. This is so much value that I think, I don't know, people that are watching us on YouTube and on Facebook, is this valuable stuff? Are you getting as much value as I am as far as this is concerned? Please let us know in the comment section. And if you have any questions or comments about this, please share them here, and we would like to just have them in. I I see there's a question from Keith. He says, in the course of pursuing a career, is it advisable to switch jobs, and if need be, or even relocate to other countries?
Um, this is a very difficult one, because careers are very personal things. Yeah. Um, they also involve a family, because I imagine that if you're running your career as a recently graduated 24-year-old, your choices are very different from someone who is maybe 32, 35, and maybe has their first child, or maybe someone who is maybe in their late 40s or so and already has family that maybe the kids are now going to secondary school and they're a little bit um, more independent. It also depends on the career itself. Some careers are easy to do with remote work. There are some careers where you physically need to be present. So, Keith, this is a very, very difficult one to really answer because you need to understand, first of all, your personal circumstances. And then you need to always make sure that indeed, when you're moving from basically point A to point B, that there's a net plus. Yeah, and you're not leaving behind. You talk about moving countries, for example, moving roles, switching jobs. I'll talk about switching jobs in a bit, but for example, moving countries, that is a big one because schools, tax simplification, tax implication. What does it mean in terms of that career? And do you see beyond the role? One of my mentors used to say that you don't always look for a role. You look for the role after the role. So if you moved countries, is that one role the beat and all on? Or do you, let's say I moved to a place because I don't know, I'm giving a bad example now. Let's say I'm moving to country X because country X is expanding in a particular sector and there'll be more opportunities, in which case then it makes sense a little bit to move because you see more than 5, 10 years ahead versus I'm moving for a job. Keith, remember I was talking about a job and the career. Are you moving for the job or the prospect of more coming in front of that one job? So very difficult to answer because your personal circumstances have to take in place, and then also indeed the particular function space area is very difficult to answer for everyone. In addition, in terms of switching jobs, maybe I'll share my experience. So my background, I'm an electrical engineer. I did electrical engineering in my current university, and then came to the UK, did my advanced degrees as well. But where I work now, I actually work in IT. So I totally switched. Um, what that meant was I had to go to the bottom of another skill pool and develop my own competencies. So I met people that were already in that skill pool and I had to start again. So, okay, you could argue I also moved countries, but I focused on the switching of jobs. And I had to respect the people I found because when they were talking, I needed to listen fast. I couldn't jump in, even though my ego was telling me I was already a fully qualified engineer somewhere else. Um, but I knew that I had chosen a totally different field. So for me, it was a career switch. Yeah. Not only that, I'd moved industry as well because I was doing research and now I was in a corporate world. So I had to build my own muscle. I had to learn and learn things and slowly find my way up. But that's because finally it made sense at the time in my career. Would you tell me now to switch careers and skill pools? Absolutely no. Will I develop in my skill pool? Yes. Would I move country? For my own specific case, depends on where I'm going because of my personal circumstances slightly different. But thanks, Kate, for the question.
This is amazing, Edith. Thank you so much for this response. I think, Keith, has your question been answered to your satisfaction? And Rita Chizito says this is eye opening. Thank you so much, Rita, for
Thank
your comment. And Sheila also says this is very informative and valuable for sure. Thank you for sharing these tips. And I think, indeed, I agree with what Sheila is saying because this is really good stuff. It's information that is valuable for all of us because what we are doing, as far as this is concerned, is we're setting ourselves up for success. I like what you mentioned about a great sponsor that is someone who whispers your name in the rooms that you're not in.
you.
And I think uh, that's really deep as far as this is concerned. And maybe just reflecting a bit on that, if somebody is there and they're wondering, how do I go about getting great sponsors in my corner or in my life? Is there any tip that you can share from your own experience that you've been able to gather?
Yeah, Kenneth, that's why when I was going to exposure uh, piece, I said that's the most difficult one because a sponsor also has to, what's the right word? Has to not like you, but your sponsor also has to see something in you to
yeah,
say, oh, because a sponsor puts their name on the line, correct?
yeah,
Because if I say, oh, Kenneth is good at moderating. If Kenneth is not good, then my name goes. So it's a
exactly.
little bit of a very difficult uh, dance of tango with sponsors. It's so difficult to crack. So even though I might say, oh, something, I have a great mentor, is very helpful, has helped me address some of my career moves. Hopefully, I tell them where I would like to go. Uh,
Yeah,
it's then very difficult to say, oh yeah, would you then sponsor me? Because oftentimes
yeah,
the sponsor has to see back in you the promise, the sort of the potential, and they say, something. Well, actually, yeah, I'll put my name behind your name and risk that you will basically deliver. What I have tried, at least for myself, and I don't know whether it will work, is back to the first point that I mentioned about being intentional.
yeah,
So most of the senior people, the people that are ahead of me, that are more senior than me, I always tell them what I want to do,
yeah,
because that plants the seed in them. And hopefully, because of my branding and who they know me, they fundamentally will then agree to be my sponsor. Now, if I was ever writing a letter, if there were referees for a CV, if I was applying for something, I would already tell them that I hold them in high regard and I would love them to be my referee or something. And that's a nice way of just saying, I want to build this relationship with you. I never know. You might have to put my name somewhere.
yeah,
Another clever trick is, this is a little bit of what I would say an underhand trick, is within the organization, you can see who are the more favored. Now, this is where the
yeah,
politics comes in. You can tell
yeah,
who is friends with who and who is friends with who. What I've seen a lot of people do is they begin to present themselves or get known, and then they expose their branding to those people, such
yeah,
that if there's ever an opportunity, the name is sort of at the back of their head. So they are
indeed,
not fundamentally saying, written down, you are my sponsor from this day, but sort of that visibility, that exposure is them presenting themselves. So you've heard about elevator pitches where you
indeed,
meet someone, whereas this one is you have more time, it's more than the 30 seconds, but
yeah,
you're probably saying, oh, by the way, hi, Kenneth, this is what I do. I'm working here. I'm really excited about these opportunities. I would love to be in a position where I can, I don't know, lead a team, or I can drive this
yeah,
project, or I can drive a sales team. I'm very passionate. So you're not really doing a CV altogether, but you're presenting yourself to the people that I wouldn't say matter, but that are seen in a favorable light. Because then when opportunities come, you're not an unknown face.
indeed.
It's a bit of an underhand one. It's a very difficult one, and this is not an exact science. And sorry about that. I can't give you, Kenneth, a cleaner answer than that.
No, but it's really valuable. Going back to what you mentioned earlier, that we should focus on building relationships before we actually need them. Because if you are thinking about building a relationship when you need it, then you're really late as far as this
That
is
won't be a
concerned.
relationship.
There
That
won't be
won't
a relationship. So,
that becomes a transaction.
yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely. There's another question here about networking that I think is interesting. How often should I contact people with whom I network with? A simple hello or an update or what I'm currently working on, from
Ah,
Edward Center.
good one, Edward. So fundamentally, I would think of this in two ways. Yeah, there's again a simple hello is something that in the corridor at coffee, lunch, simple hellos that will always be fine. That's just being courteous. Yeah. Um, the way I see this is back to this whole point about knowing your stakeholder and knowing managing your manager. We all have personality types. Yeah. I'm sure, and maybe there's something, Kenneth, that can be shared with the team.
Yeah,
Is there's lots of tests that people can do online. They're free. Myers-Briggs, there's so many of them. And it just basically, if I'm summarized very quickly, it says people are on some sort of spectrum of scales. Yeah, there's some people that like detail, and there's some people that have high level. Yeah, there's some people that are more interested in the outcome, and there's some people that are interested in the process. There's some people that are interested in people and don't like confrontation, and there's some people that don't mind confrontation and they like to shake things. There's people who are patient. So, and I think everyone knows that their key stakeholders are on some sort of spectrum in a lot of these different places. I'll give you an example. My current boss is French. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is what I would say a diplomat. Yeah, is an absolute diplomat. So he will never probably tell me no direct in my face, even though he lives in Holland. But I also know that he likes details. So even when we discuss something, he wants me to write a bit of a detailed email. I've never written to him one line, never, because I always have to write 2 or 3 lines, even when it's actually only one point.
Yeah.
So, Edward, if then you are trying to build a relationship with the different people, you probably know which person is okay with a simple hello because you've kept the light on versus someone who needs an update on what you're working on versus someone that needs, oh, by the way, you know something, let's have a coffee and I hope you spend 30 minutes building that relationship. So I guess the answer, Edward, is more it depends on one, which type of stakeholder it is. Remember, there are those where we just keep informed, there are those that we manage closely, there are those that we give a lot of time because they're very pivotal to our work life. Those ones I would propose you spend more time chatting with them, talking with them, telling them what you're doing, asking about what's happening. What I used to have a lot with my previous mentor was would just have to sit and then I would say, hey, uh, what's going on in the organization? I'm not in those rooms. What's going on in the organization? Oh,
Yeah.
well, we're trying to sell off this piece. Oh, yeah, we're trying to acquire this. Oh, we're having cost cuts. Oh, all of these things that keeps you very much in tune with what's going on. That means now, if you meet, let's say, the next senior person, you're a little bit more alive to what's going on. So your questions are a little bit more tuned. You're not asking, let's say, a dumb question, for lack of a better phrase. So being very aware of your stakeholders and who needs what information is very key.
Yeah.
Who needs an hello and who needs 20, 30 minutes of a conversation.
Indeed. I think, wow, this is good stuff. Thank you so much again. And going back to what you mentioned earlier about just knowing the difference between a job and a career, that sometimes we have to be intentional when we are choosing the career path that we are on. And you spoke about planning and setting goals and just going at it in a very specific way. You reminded me of something that it's a quote that it's about the 6 P's, that proper prior planning prevents poor performance,
Oh,
linking
nice.
into the thing that you were sharing earlier about the pie and the importance of performance as far as careers are concerned, and that you can't substitute for that. And just thinking about situations where maybe for a season you find that you're not able to perform as you are expected because of life changes and things just yeah, they say life is what happens to us while we're busy making other plans. and
Right.
and you're a top performer and all of a sudden just some things happen and you find yourself challenged. How would you address this, that you find that you're in a place that you thought is in line with the career that you should be on, but then you find yourself confronted with the reality of the life circumstances you're having to navigate, and it has affected your performance and you're almost even doubting yourself on the path that you're on? I don't know if it makes sense.
Uh, uh, a little bit. So my reflections would be, first of all, as I mentioned in the presentation, is careers are never going to be a straight path. It's not linear. Yeah. There's going to be times when, as you said, life happens.
Yeah.
We don't choose our bosses. We don't choose our teams. We don't even choose the tasks oftentimes. So there's a degree of randomness. There's a degree of good luck, bad luck that could hit us sideways while you're just doing your work. Um, One of the things that sort of comes to mind is while we are pursuing the career, and why I like the last slide as well around self-care, is that it should not also define you. Yeah. So it should not be that because maybe you have not performed well in a year or two, or life has pushed you sideways, that then it eats into your self-confidence, your self-esteem, and it makes you doubt who you are. Yeah, I am hoping that we shall build our own resilience, our own self-esteem, to know that one bad year, 2 bad years is not the end. In fact, you'd argue that's the whole of life, because in many other areas, you could be down in finances, you could be down in relationships, you could be down in so many things, in sports, in your business, whatever. Career is just one of the many assets of life that you could find yourself at the short end of. Hopefully, the circumstances are not permanent, that they do not take you away from your ultimate goal. But fundamentally, I'm hoping that it doesn't affect your self-esteem and your 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 importance of you as a human being. In
Yeah.
fact, there was a time, and sorry, I'll be sharing my personal as well. The time when I felt I'd performed better than, for example, a performance review had given me, and it hit me quite hard, and it made me question things. Am I in the right role? Should I change careers? I was way earlier when I was just starting. Should I change careers again? And I remember it made me really question, what have I done? Sometimes you want to first blame other things. I wish I'd done this a little bit earlier and all of this.
Yeah.
But then actually, I realized that even though that I had had a bit of a failure, it sharpened me and it made me more empathetic later. Because now, when I was a line manager and I was having to give someone performance feedback, I could very much pinpoint and I could see the same reaction in his face like I had when I was many, many years back. So sometimes, not always, sometimes those side moves, sometimes those, they call it a punch in your throat, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes might develop your character, sometimes might give you a thicker skin, sometimes might help you build resilience, as long as it does not permanently, side rail you and take you down the path of self-doubt, loss of self-esteem, or mental health issues. Then that, for me, I think you should draw a line, because no job, no career should make you want to lose the will to move on to do the next thing in a positive way, because fundamentally you're part of a family. You'll affect others if your mentor is not right. I
Indeed.
would say some challenge is okay. Some setbacks, you could argue, is part of life. We can't judge, we can't do that. But as soon as it crosses into I can't function, this is really um, taking me off from my light, then I would say no. That is where I would draw a line. There has to be a very thick line there, between a Chinese wall, to be honest,
Indeed.
between healthy setbacks and I don't feel like going to work.
Yeah. Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah,
And just to add to that, that we are human beings, not human doings.
correct,
That the career is for us, and we are not for the career.
correct, 100%.
And thank you so much. There's another question here from Keith. He says, "What's your take on balancing career development and raising a functioning family?"
Keith is asking, he's asking the difficult ones. What's the balancing? So
Yeah.
I read many, many years ago, a quote which I think is actually so true, and it's worth sharing. Um, and it says that one of the biggest decisions that any person can ever make is the choice of their partner.
Yeah.
The biggest, most important decision you'll ever take in your life is the choice of your partner, because that affects, a little bit of a side note, it affects, you know, your family life, your health, approach to finances, how you raise kids, maybe use your spirituality and your religion, how your social life. And for me, that is core to this question, because the second part of that question is talk about a functioning family. Keith, there's no functioning family without the two adults. So you can answer this question for yourself, but the second person in that part of that, well, the second adult in that family has to be on the same page. Yeah. So the trick is, if you have a partner, if you have a partner that understands that the family's agenda or the plan of the family is to be successful, and that involves career development for both of you, by the for both partners. Yeah, this is something that the family needs to communicate, think, talk through, and navigate, because it's not something that's permanent, that one person, let's say, sits at home while the other goes for career advancement, and vice versa. Yeah, it is something that I think within the family has to to be talked about, or at least those choices made intentionally. It cannot, this is where you cannot float. Yeah. Because it takes, oftentimes, especially when kids are young, when they need most of the attention, that's when also most young adults are just getting up in their career and just beginning to move from, let's say, early entry into mid-level maybe. So it just happens that life has this very weird way of, when the kids need most attention is when the young parents are just pushing and settling in their careers and beginning to grow. So it's very, very difficult, Keith, to balance that. Your question was, how do you balance? Is, when do I leave early for work and then go and pick the kids for, when the kid wants to go for swimming and I need to put in an extra work to finish the project. And I've noticed that in some cases, one partner suffers while the other moves, and hopefully then it balances out. I've seen cases where both parents take, I don't know, hey, we shall work 3 or 4 days a week just because we need to balance. I've seen some partners where they've said, okay, we'll hold off for the kids until we've pushed a little bit and then do it. But there's no formulas again, because people's life choices and wishes and desires are different. But Keith, that is a very, very difficult question, because there's no one size fits all again, unfortunately. Because do you say, Keith, now you be a stay-at-home dad for X amount of time while the kids grow and hold back your career development while your partner moves? Do you do that together? Do you say you do 1 year and then do 1 year? Does one partner finally just give up and say, okay, I'm not going to do any career development? I've seen partners where the choice of their 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 careers is complementary. Some people like work at night. Others have had, like, I'm in the nursing, so then when I'm out at night, but then that doesn't mean then it's a very good functioning family, because that means those parents are not there with the kids. As you know, in Europe or in diaspora, you are the father, the mother, the the shamba boy, the gardener, the driver, the everything for the kids, the coach, the so you have to both be there. It is indeed a very difficult question, and I'm afraid, Keith, I don't have an answer of the perfect way to balance career development, apart from saying you just have to discuss this and be open about it, and hopefully navigate it, and know that it might change as you grow in your fields. And hopefully now there's a little bit more flexibility. I can imagine 10, 15, 20 years ago, when there was no working from home, he needed to be, at your workplace at a certain amount of time and then clock at a certain amount of time. For example, dads were not allowed to take too much paternity care. Dads were not allowed, but it was maybe not seen as cool to work part-time, but now it's a little bit more accepted. So hopefully it's getting easier for parents to make these difficult decisions, but it doesn't take away the fact that they are difficult and very unique for every couple. Let's put it that way. And it's
And
harder with kids as well.
most definitely. Wow. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Steve. This is really valuable. I really just want to take this moment and acknowledge you for the work that you've done, the journey that you've been on, because I like what you said, that the advice you're giving us, the value you're giving us, is what you wished you had when you were starting out, or that you wish you had this earlier. Other people would have found answers and choose not have the willingness to even share this with others. So I want to acknowledge you for the journey you've been on and the work you've done and the sacrifices you've made, and then for going full circle and then deciding to come back and share this with the community.
Yeah.
If somebody is watching this and they would like to connect with you to get some guidance as far as career mentorship or direction, are you available for this?
Yes, I don't mind obviously sharing this information back, and I'm happy, by the way, Kenneth, if we could deep dive on another topic on another day in any of these, because as you can tell, we've scattered through so many elements in there.
And
We might be able to unpick maybe others as well.
and
I'm a big fan of the communication, but I had to improve my communication very much just to be effective. But yes, I'm
you
more than
are an
happy to
excellent
help.
communicator.
Oh, thanks, thanks, thanks. I have battle scars
Uh,
to prove it. But
good.
yes, I'm more than happy to talk to some of our colleagues and see. And to be honest, I think maybe it's something we need to do across the whole of Khan as well, correct? So then, if others can share their experience, but also mentor or speak to, or even though it's a one-off, it doesn't have to be a constant thing. I'm more than happy to help.
Most definitely. So maybe we can just engage the audience that is with us here. Could you tell us what you would like us to come back with, Steve, in the next time we have him on the UCN Connect? What would you like us to talk about? Um, if you have a specific topic, you can put it in the comments and we can have that. But thank you so much for your willingness to be available. We've already been on for 80 minutes, and it's they say time flies when you're having fun. It just
Yes,
it
indeed.
doesn't
Even on
it
a
doesn't,
Friday.
it doesn't feel like 80 minutes, but I just want to acknowledge you again and say thank you. It's its value and the community. I mean, I know some people are not able to join us live because of various reasons. It's a Friday, like you said, but the material is going to remain on the platforms and it's accessible for people who would like to go back and go over it because I think there's great value in it. Do you have any closing remarks that you would like to share, and we bring this in for landing?
No, thanks. I've thoroughly enjoyed sharing some of this. One of the things that you hear but perhaps do not fully recognize is the more you share something that you know, the more it actually also lands for you. They
Yeah.
say when you teach something is when you truly know it. So it
Wow.
looks like the more I'm going through some of these concepts, the more it will also land for myself. And there are also so many things that I would love to improve. And it's never too late. I will actually be looking through his slides again one more time. Just oh, maybe I should over the Christmas begin to do something X or Y. But I loved it. Thanks for the invitation, Kenneth and crew. Then yeah, just a final message is for me. If I was to say one thing is keep learning, and develop your flex muscles because change, resilience, all of that is ability to adapt. You could throw away all the other stuff, but if you don't adapt, if you don't change, it's very, very difficult to grow. And to be honest, in anything, forget about the career, just even the way I used to raise my first child is different from the way I raised my second child. It's
Indeed.
just different. It's just different.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
having that flexible man, that rubber band mind, that mindset, that growth, and learning will hopefully get all of us a little bit one step ahead. I enjoyed it and looking forward to a great session again. And everyone do have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. And indeed, I just want to leave you with this. There's a quote that you reminded me of. It says, "In times of change, the learners will inherit the earth, while the land will be equipped to live in a world that no longer exists."
Yes,
So
fully. Yeah,
so let's just
indeed,
embrace
indeed.
change and
Yeah.
be on this journey of learning. This has been so valuable. There's so much gratitude coming in for you in the comments.
Oh,
Kit
thanks.
says thanks. Sarah Berry says this has been an amazing session. Thank you for sharing such remarkable life tips, Mr. Otim. And Sandra Mitty says great informative session, Steve. Thank you for sharing. Rita Chizito says thank you so much. Uh, Thank you so much, Steve. And thank you so much again on behalf of the Career Advancement Network and the Ugandan community here in the Netherlands. We say thank you to you for your time, your availability, and your dedication to the community, but also to its professional development, that you can be available to do this.
Super. Welcome. Thanks a lot as well.